In this video, we're going to be painting up Abomination from Marvel Crisis Protocol. Hey guys, Rich from Rich Gaming. I hope everyone is doing fantastic. Well, welcome to this, a very different video. We've been doing a lot of tier lists and other things on the channel, so I thought I would mix it up and do something completely different. And I've been seeing online about this new, or potentially new painting idea. I'd not seen it before, called double slap chop. Now, I've tried slap chop in the past. It really wasn't for me. I even painted up some miniatures live on stream. And it's a great way of being able to do, I would say, lesser quality miniatures. So I use it a lot for board games and things like that where they come with miniatures, but I didn't really like the final effect for more complex and indeed better quality miniatures that we get in tabletop wargaming. In particular for me, Star Wars Shatterpoint and Marvel Crisis Protocol. But I've seen this new method called double slap chop, and I've just recently built up this guy here, so I thought let's give it a try. Okay guys, so here we go. Let me just take you through what I've done already. Obviously built the model, taken out any obvious mold lines, filled in any obvious gaps. Now, to be fair to AMG, there were very, very few on this model. And then it's been primed in black. If I turn it underneath, you can see it's there's still some of the black parts there. And then I've done a very heavy zenithal, so not just from above, but also from a 90-degree angle as well, all the way over the model. Now, the reason for that is I want to minimize the black parts, and make sure that we've got a base coat of that grey that's going to show up these speed paints. So I am going to be using the speed paints 2.0 from Army Painter exclusively on this. I've got a couple of different colours to the side of me here because I haven't quite decided yet what it is we're going to be, or what the final colours are going to be. But what we now need to do is pretty much just the normal first part of a slap chop step. So I'm going to get my trusty white paint. Again, I like using Vallejo for my sort of standard paints. We're just going to squeeze a little bit out onto the board here. And then whenever I'm doing anything sort of slap chop-esque, I have these very cheap, I think they were about £2 for a pack of 6, all different sizes, makeup brushes. I think these work perfectly fine. I do have the nicer ones from Artis Opus, but I think for what we're doing here, these work absolutely fine. So just going to make sure there's a little bit of moisture on the brush, even though it is called dry brushing. If you don't have any moisture on your brush whatsoever, then it is going to come out a little bit chalky, which we definitely don't want. Then I'm just going to get the paint on there, get rid of all of the excess on the board, and then we're just going to start, and we're going to go all over this model in varying directions. There we go, that looks pretty good now. We're getting not much coming off the back of that, and then we're just going to go all around the model. Now, what I want to do is focus on some of the areas where I know I want it to be lighter. So for example, in his chest area here, I want to go more for a bony off-white type colour. So I'm going to focus more of my effort with the initial paint just on this area here, and then just take it and go over the rest of the model. So I'll do this, come back, and I'll show you when it's finished. Okay guys, so here he is. Here's our big guy, all dry brushed up. You can see that on some of the areas that we know they're going to end up a little bit darker, we've got a little less heavy on there. But for that front part of his chest where we know that we're going to be using a lighter paint, I have kept it a little bit lighter on there. So now we need to talk about paint selection. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be using exclusively Army Speed Paint 2.0. We've got a couple of options when it comes to his skin. So we've got this ghoul green, we've got this shamrock green, and then we've got the orc skin. I do also have this charming chartreuse. I'm probably butchering that, which is more of a greenish yellow, so we'll see how that looks. And then we've also got quite a dark greyish green, which I think may be the one that I end up using. But again, we'll see how that looks. But I'll put that to one side. And then for his actual sort of pale part on the front, I'm going to try this bony matter, this pale brown. I'm hoping it's going to come through okay. Again, I'm using Speed Paints 2.0. I haven't tried this. Well, this is the first time I've tried this, but I do know with the original Speed Paints, they did sometimes reactivate. And this method that we're going to do, I don't think will work particularly well for that. So that's what we're going to use for his central part of his body. And then for the sort of scaly parts along the back here, we're going to be using this noble skin. Again, Army Painter 2.0. And then really the only other things that we need to worry about painting are going to be his trunks. So he's got a lovely pair of tighty whities, but they're more like tighty blueies. So we'll just use the royal robes for that. And then what we'll do for everything else is we'll use more of a, let's call it quote unquote, a traditional painting method. So we're going to start, and we are going to start with this gunner camo, this dark greyish green. I think it is going to work quite well for Abomination. Now the nice thing about these, you can probably hear, they come with a little ball in there, a little mixing ball. So you don't need to worry too much about the mixing side of things. And we're just going to start off with his feet, or with his legs, sorry, and see how this is looking and whether or not it's giving us the desired result that we want. Now I do also like to always add a little bit of Speed Paint Medium in there as well. Why am I using Speed Paint Medium and not water? This came with the big pack that I got, so I thought I would use this and use it up. Now with this method, we also want to make sure that we're not mixing any colours. Now the reason for that is we are going to be painting this model essentially twice. So we want to make sure that we've got access to the same colour paints that we use on the first pop around. So from here, I'm just going to mark out where his trunks are. So this is going to be, I'll just go around his trunk. So this is going to be a slightly darker Abomination, but that's fine. Now what I want to make sure is we don't get any of this pooling or anything like that. So I'm going to go around, I'm going to paint all of his legs, and I'm going to bring it back to you and show you what it looks like. Okay guys, so here we go. That's his legs done. Not taking too long, you know, they are speed paints after all. So all we're going to do now is go around and do the rest of the sort of fleshy parts, but leaving this middle part of the torso, and also leaving a little bit of the palms of the hands as well, because I do want to use, as I mentioned, that bony matter for them, just to give them a slightly different look and feel. We'll go around and do a little bit of his face and his ears and things like that in there as well. So yeah, I mean, as you can see right now, it's looking like a pretty standard slap chop type finish. I will say, I mean, it's not completely dry yet. One of my problems with it is I like quite a matte finish, and I do find the speed paints of any sorts, they are quite, they're not glossy, but they are quite satiny. They've got a little bit more of a sheen than what I would normally like, but yeah, we'll crack on with it. As I say, we're going to go through, do some other parts of the skin, and we'll bring you back and show you what it's looking like. Okay guys, so here we go. That is the rest of his skin part, let's call it, done. We are now going to move on to the bony matter. You'll see I did sort of etch in some of the green just to show where I wanted it to go. I might go back and forth a little bit between the bony matter and the green that I used, the Gunner Camo, just to sort of try and blend it in a little bit. But let's take a look at the bony matter again. Give it a good shake and see what this is looking like and how it's coming out. Maybe I should have done the bony matter first, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see what it's looking like and see if it's the right sort of colour that we want. Yeah, I think that works. I think that's absolutely fine. We're just going to give it one little coat here. Again, I am pulling in some of these other parts of the green just to try and blend it a little bit. Maybe we could have gone a little bit heavy with the green in some places, but that's absolutely fine. The second part of this will tidy all of this up, or hopefully tidy all of this up quite considerably. Now I've almost almost glazed over there, so what I may even do is just come back in with that green and just pull a little bit more of that in. Again, it's working a little bit better on the hands here because the hands are still that little bit wet. So yeah, so not the best at the moment, but I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to just glaze a little bit more of that in and just try and blend it a little bit, just so it's quite, not quite as stark as what we are seeing here. Okay, guys, so I think I've managed to salvage that a little bit. Again, this is one of the reasons why I don't often use speed paints. I'm sure there are people out there who are much better at it than I am. Maybe I should have done the bony matter first. Maybe I should have left it a little bit wet still. But again, we've got another step here, another part of the process that I'm hoping will remedy some of these pretty poor blends. So now we're going to move on to the noble skin. This is a dark brown. And this is basically what we're going to use for all of this sort of hardened carapace, maybe is what you call it. There's quite a bit to do here. But again, just give it a really good shake. I have to shake these so well because I haven't really used them. I don't use them that often. I did pick them up for an experiment, and I did paint up my a lot of my Lord of the Rings journeys in Middle Earth. We used painting these. And again, for them, it's perfectly fine. But as I say, usually for models like this, I prefer to use more traditional sort of acrylic paints. As I already mentioned, Vallejo are my paint of choice. But let's see how this brown goes on and if it's a nice enough brown for us. And yeah, okay, I do quite like that. So we're going to go around. We're going to paint up all of his carapace areas, and then again we will bring you back and show you the final results. Okay guys, so here we go. This is Emile Blonsky finished. Now you'll notice I've gone in and done a couple of other things as well, so I'll just quickly run through what I used. Used royal robes for his trunks there, and then I also used some metallics. So I used the broadsword silver just to sort of mark out the front of his trunks, and also to do the nails that are on here as well. We then use a little bit of Gravelord Grey. Now this isn't a 2.0 paint, I realised afterwards, so we'll see what happens with that. And then we use this bright red, it's a reddish orange is what it says, just to do the paving. And then we had a copper somewhere. Here we go. We didn't then use the brazen copper just for the manhole cover, and then also the bar at the back. And then lastly, we just used a little bit of that orc skin just to bring out the street signs here. Now these are still wet. It's still wet in places. What I will be doing is using a silver and going over the writing in the signs and things like that, but there's no point in doing that until we get to the very end stage, because we're about to do something that I don't think I've ever done before. So the next stage, so this is kind of, other than tidying up the base and things like that, this is fine, right? This is absolutely fine, tabletop-ish type quality. You know, from afar it looks perfectly fine, but you know, you get up close and personal and you can see some of the parts, some of the areas are not the best. To give you an idea of time, this has taken me in total about 15 minutes to paint. A little bit of that was drying time as well. So very, very quick. And I think for 15 minutes, right, anyone would be happy with this in terms of a paint quality. But what we're now going to do is apparently take it to the next level. And the way that we're going to do that is going back to our white. We're again going to use a dry brush technique. We're going to make sure that there's very, very little paint left on this brush, and we're going to dry brush it all over. But before we can do that, I need to give this 10-15 minutes just to make sure it's completely dry. Now you could use a hairdryer or something like that to speed up this process, but I'm going to come back as soon as this is dry and we'll show you the next stage. Okay guys, so this is now fully dry. So I'm going to pop this to one side here. We're going to get our trusty white out again. Now this part is a little bit concerning because I've never done anything like this before. Dry brushing over and then with a view that then we're going to go back over again. I just want to just make sure there's a little bit of moisture in the brush just to make sure. And by the way I do that is I just get a little bit of water from my pot, just pop it on there and then just work just the slightest little bit of water in there just to make sure the bristles are not completely dry. And the reason I'm doing it on my hand is if I do it on a paper towel, it will just reabsorb everything back in. So that's nice now. So let's go in here. Let's get our paint again. Let's work all of this off. Just so we have almost really work it off there. Just so we have almost nothing's coming off the brush there. And then I gather we just go for it. So let's just very lightly go over these areas again. And I gather the idea behind this is it's just going to pull out all of those raised areas once again, make them white, and then when we go back over with the same colour paint, it should, in theory, leave us with a much better definition. A little bit more paint on there, and again, just really work it into the bristles. Make sure there's very little coming off. Again, areas I want to focus on are the face, faces and bases. We all know the saying. But then really just going over, and because it's so omnidirectional in terms of where the details are in this model, I'm kind of just doing, you know, motions in every direction. Not pressing on hard at all, just letting the paint naturally come off the brush. When you can see that, you know, nothing else is coming off, let's just go back in, get a little bit more paint. Again, a little bit aggressive to get the excess off, and then just back into the model nice and lightly. Now, as I'm doing this, guys, I want to say that this is by no means a painting tutorial. If you want to learn how to paint well, there are many other content creators out there who are much better painters than I am. When I want to, when I spend the time and effort, I feel like I can get a reasonable quality. But this is really all about trying this method, seeing if it can give good results. I'm also going to do it over the metallic speed paints on there as well, again, just to see what it looks like. Does it work? Does it not work? I'm not really sure how liberal we're supposed to be with this, but we'll just keep going until we think we've got a good level on there. Okay, just a little bit under here. Not putting any pressure on the brush whatsoever, just letting that paint naturally pick out all of those exposed raised parts. Why not put a little bit on there as well, just under here where we've maybe missed. Oh, there's maybe a little bit too much on there. Again, I'm going to spend a little bit more and press on just ever so slightly harder onto this front area, because that is a part where we want it to be lighter. And again, I'm just doing the face part a little bit more than the other areas, because you tend to find that that's where a lot of the definition is, and it's the part that you want to stand out the most as well. But you can see that paint even without putting any pressure on. So where we've got areas like this, what you want to do is kind of brush into any of the ridges. So you can see here we've got these raised bits here. Rather than coming down like this, you want to go against it, basically, is what you want to do. And similarly, we can make sure we get these bits and do a similar thing here. Although these again these have got parts pretty much all over. Just do a bit around the base. Now the base is definitely something I may come back to and doing a more quote unquote traditional method, but we'll see how it looks at the end of this process and whether or not we need to do it again. Just want to make sure we get as much of that excess paint off as possible, and then I'm gonna just go over this front part again. Edges of the ears, things like that, make sure you've picked them all out. So I was saying, yeah, so if you do want to learn how to paint well, and somebody who's actually, or a couple of people actually who are very, very good teachers, especially over video, because it's, trust me when I say painting, whilst you're confined to this area in front of the camera, is most definitely not the easiest thing to do. But a couple of people who I think do it really, really well. Sarastro, go check him out on YouTube. He actually does a lot of MCP, plus a lot of Shatterpoint and other things as well. So yeah, definitely go and check him out. Watched many hours of Sarastro videos over my years of painting. And then the other person who I really like is Epic Duck Studio. They take a slightly different approach to painting. They do a lot of, or they did do a lot of comic book style paint jobs, which I really, really liked. And again, they've done MCP in the past before, but I always find that whenever I'm watching a tutorial, it's less about this is how you need to paint this character, and it's more about oh, here are some options in terms of and here are some methods that you can take, and then use the next time you come to paint your next model, not necessarily, you know, use X colour for this and Y colour for this, and do it in this way. It's very much more, here's some techniques, this is how I do it, and then you can transfer those over to the next time you actually paint your next model up. Just going to get the fingertips just a little bit here, just on top of his head. I want to just get a little bit more of that in there as well, a little bit more on his hand there. And I feel like we are good. Maybe underneath here, just a little bit more. Always feels weird doing it underneath in the areas that would be shadows, but it is the method. I mean, to be fair, for Abomination, I mean, I actually think just that dry brush alone, at least for me, what it's done is tone down the shininess. Now, all of the shininess is about to come back in because we're about to go back over and do the same thing again. But actually, I really don't mind that as a finish. It's a little bit chalky in areas you can see sort of here and here, you know, so normal circumstances I would use some, you know, standard paint, let's call it, and I would, you know, sort of glaze that over just to take away some of the chalkiness and things like that. But I actually think that looks pretty darn good as it is, but we are going to follow this through. We are going to do the rest of the method. So I'm going to let this dry. We're going to come back and then we're going to go back over the model and see if we get that pop that I've seen on some of the other videos, or if I've just completely messed it up and we should do something completely different. Okay guys, so this is now completely dry. So we are going to start this process again. Let's start with the bony matter this time. But what I'm going to do this time round is I'm going to dilute them a little bit more than what I did previously. I'm also going to get my Gunner camo out again as well, just to make sure I've got these side by side, so I can do a little bit of that blending that I mentioned. Let me get my brush there. So let me get my medium. Where's it gone? There we go. So I'm going to use like a 2-to-1 ratio of paint versus medium, and then just whatever excess water I've got on my brush, really. Now with this one, what I want to do is make sure I don't have a lot of paint on the actual brush. I almost want to glaze over this. And the reason why is we've already done kind of the traditional method, and that's already all gone into the recesses. So what I don't want now is a lot of pooling. So I'm almost just gonna, it's still not as thin as a glaze, but I'm just gonna go and I'm just going to make sure we don't get any pooling. Just go over all of these areas. I'm going to go a little bit further than I did before, with the hope that that actually does blend in to the rest of the paint and does give me a little bit of, you know, sort of more natural looking change of colour, so it's not as stark and as harsh. And then again with that Gunner camo, so that green colour that we've got, again making sure we don't have a huge amount on the brush. We're just going to start again and we're just going to go back over there and just work it into all of these areas, and then I'm going to just take it and drag where we've already painted with the bony colour And I will say that immediately we are getting much more, or a much better coverage. Now obviously this is essentially the second, the second layer of paint, so you would expect that, but it is already looking quite nice. Again, I'm just going to go into the recesses again. That's going to, essentially act as my as my shadow. And again, on these leg parts, let's finish this part off here first. So rather than boring you guys with everything, I'm going to go away and I'm going to go back over all of these green parts so you can see how it looks, and I'll bring you back once that's done, show you what the green looks like, and then we'll move on to the other colours. I just want to bring you back a second, guys, just to kind of show you the difference. So this leg has been repainted, this leg hasn't, and I think you can sort of clearly see the difference. Where I thought it looked quite good before with just the really high level highlights, actually once you go back over that, I have missed a little bit there, once you go back over that, it does make quite a big difference, and does almost, as I say, act as like you're glazing it over or blending it in. So yeah, happy so far. I'll finish this other leg off and I'll come back and show you the final results of the green. Okay guys, so that is the green all done, and I've got to say it does make a difference. I feel like the blends on the top look a lot nicer. Are they perfect? Could you do better with, traditional paints? Could I do better if I was, better at better at using speed paints? Probably yes and yes. But again, I think for the time and effort it's taken, I think that looks pretty darn good. So now we're going to go back to our noble skin. And we are just going to do exactly the same thing, going over all those areas that we've just dry brushed with the noble skin, and see if it has the same effect on that brown that we've got on the model itself. But I've got to say, guys, so far I'm pretty impressed with this method. So again, guys, I wanted to just bring you back just to kind of show you the difference. As you can probably tell, this half of the back and then the arm has had that second layer of paint. Again, it's been thinned down a little bit more than what the previous one had. And again, it's still a little bit wet, but you can already see the difference and the sort of saturation in the colour, and how much better coverage we're getting with it. It looks a lot less like when you use normal speed paints. Or even the normal slap chop method. But the slap chop method, I often find you can sometimes see the original brush strokes and things like that. Whereas I think this is coming out much, much better. If we're looking from the front there again, you can tell the difference between these two parts. We haven't done his face yet, but again, I just want to show you the difference that one extra layer makes. So yeah, again, we're going to go away, we're going to finish this off, and I'll bring it back and show you guys the final results. Okay guys, and with all that now, we finished everything up. We've done the brown, you can see there on the back, it's finished. We also did go in, we just touched up and put the silver into here. We've obviously put one coat on the base. I can see some little bits of white that I need to just go back in and just retouch up over. But yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting experiment. I think where it's worked really well are on these high texture details. So, the scale parts, his skin, things like that. Where it hasn't worked as well is on these larger flat areas. One of the things I'll definitely be doing is going back in and actually touching these up with, quote unquote, traditional paints. But it will just be a touch up because I do have I do have the basics there. But yeah, I mean, look, all in all, guys, I'm just looking at the time now on my recording. I'm at about the 1 hour 30 mark, 1 hour 45, but I walked away for about 10 minutes, but under 2 hours, which I think for a model this size, obviously this is a much bigger model. It's on a big base. And with the results, I mean, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, I'm going to jump back to the other camera in a moment and give you some final thoughts. I think there's still some limitations, at least with my painting ability. You know, some of these blends are nowhere near as nice as what I would have liked them to have been. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out and how it looks. I think, you know, on the tabletop, I think it's going to look absolutely fine. I don't think it's going to look out of place with any of the other models that I've painted up. And I think you really can tell a huge difference between what we've got now with this model and what we had before. With the model before. I think it is night and day. So it definitely does work. It definitely is worth taking that extra time and doing that extra step. Now, I will say that painting up the second time, whilst I didn't need to worry as much about coverage, I was a lot more careful and a lot more meticulous around how I was putting the paint on. I was painting each one of the, you know, sort of scaly parts and things individually, just to make sure I did get full coverage. And the other thing I really like about painting it in this way is it is a little bit more forgiving. I often find with speed paints, and I don't know why, and I've already mentioned it down here, maybe because the base is white, that any parts you miss are very, very noticeable. Whereas typically, you know, if I show you my Apocalypse, for example, you know, I start with black, so everything starts with black. Obviously, the base is already done on him, but I start with black in most situations. So even if you do miss parts, kind of doesn't stand out as much when you're using speed paints. When you're on a lighter starting point, whether it's the grey or whether it's, you know, the white that's come through as part of the dry brushing. You can, you know, miss parts on it. And I often do, and I'll go back and I'll realise, oh no, I've missed that part here and this part here. I think that by going back over it and doing a second pass at the model, not only can you get, you know, slightly better blends than what I got before, and again, there will be people out there who will be able to do this much, much better than I can, but much better blends. But it also gives you kind of a second pass to hit any of those parts that you missed previously. So yeah, all in all, guys, fairly happy with it. Let's jump back over to the camera and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, guys, so final thoughts. I think first of all, as I already said, really happy with the results, and I think it's definitely a step up from traditional slap chop, if you like. It definitely gives you a much, much better final result. I do think model selection is something that is very, very important. I picked Abomination on purpose because there was a lot of detail. It's a bigger model, so it kind of works better. Is it going to work on every single type of model? No. But I would say it's a big, big step up from doing traditional slap chop. So for me, where this sort of method is going to sit is I'm probably not going to use it again for my sort of proper miniatures. So my Shatterpoint, my Marvel Crisis Protocol, things like that. Where I can see it working really well is even on some of the paint jobs that I've already done on things like Hero Quest, things like Journeys in Middle-earth. I think it can happily go back, do a dry brush over there and go over the models again and just make them pop that little bit more. I also think on smaller miniature games, I've got the MESBG, the new Battle for Middle-earth, War of the Rohirrim. I have that on pre-order. There's going to be lots of models in there. And, you know, putting the champions and hero models to one side, I do think for, you know, rank and file type stuff, whether it's Age of Sigmar, whether it's maybe less so Age of Sigmar, but Old World that I've been playing quite a bit of as well, and MESBG that's coming up where they are slightly smaller models. I think this could work really, really well for those rank and file type troops. But then maybe go back to a more traditional method for the heroes where you do want to be able to put more detail in there. So I would say, you know, it is a huge step up from what I've done with traditional slap chop. And again, my method is slightly different. You know, I do that black base coat with then a zenithal highlight rather than doing the double dry brush. I just think that works a little bit better. It gives you the shadows where you want them. But I do think from what I've done previously with slap chop versus this double slap chop method, it's a huge step up, and it's much closer to using traditional paint, at least for me, than what slap chop was, and I'm much happier with the final results of there. We are going to leave it there, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this somewhat slightly different type of video. Like I say, please don't take this as a painting guide. I just wanted to show you this method, show you how my approach to it, how I did it, show you the final results. If you like them, great, go and try it for yourself. But I don't think, you know, for me personally, it's not going to replace the more traditional painting styles that I use. But yeah, we're going to leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I want to give a big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters and YouTube members. You guys make running the channel that much easier. So if you do want to support us via Patreon or YouTube, you can go down to the link in the description below for Patreon, or click that join button. For as little as £1 a month, you can support the channel. But as always, you don't need to do any of that. Just simply liking, commenting, subscribing, all really do help. Let me know, guys, do you like these? Do you want to see me do more painting stuff, maybe trying out different methods and things like that? Normally these are reserved for live streams, but I thought I'd do something a little bit different here. It is my first time doing it, so apologies for camera angles and weird shenanigans and things like that. Check out the Discord, guys. It's where we have so many. They've got over 1,000 members now. We talk about all things MCP, Shatterpoint, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. It's also where we post about all of our events and things that we're running, so go and check that out. And as always, guys, it leaves me with just enough time to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, bye for now.